We just did our very first shower installation, and I wanted to share some of the learnings that we had going through it. So there's basically 3 different types of shower curb that you can have. If you're doing a prefab shower pan, then it'll probably come with a prefab shower curb, or you can purchase one separately. You can also do a poured cement type shower curb, where you use the same forming braces that you would use with regular formed cement, and then pour it in, and then that would give you a nice level surface to work with. Another common DIY one that's probably the most economical is you could also use 2x4s and cover those with cement board, and that lets you, pretty much build it however you want to, but then you have to be very careful to make sure it's structural. So your curb height needs to be at least 2 inches above the height of your drain, but no more than 9 inches, which would essentially be a bathtub and kind of defeat the point. So most people usually shoot for that 2 to 2.5 inch range, just so they have a very easy to step over curb. We decided to go with the prefabricated foam curb, even though I am doing a dry pack shower pan. I went with this because it's going to be pretty easy to install, and I wanted something that was waterproof all the way through, so I was a little bit nervous about working with a 2x4 type shower curb, because then if it gets wet, then it starts to rot all the way through. There's a couple different brands you can buy of these polystyrene curbs. If you're going to be buying a prefabricated shower pan, I recommend getting the same brand. Since we're just getting the curb, we could just pick that up all by itself. They're relatively expensive. For this 60-inch curb, it costs about $50. So if you're going to do a DIY route with 2x4s or poured concrete, you could probably get a little bit cheaper. I like the prefabricated curb though, because it's already the right dimensions and it's very easy to install. So since it was 60 inches, we had to trim off the edges a little bit to make up for the space for the cement board, as well as I wanted about a 1/4 inch gap on either side to pack in that thin set. So you can cut this pretty easily with just a hacksaw. The outside shell is harder, but the inside is a pretty soft polystyrene, so you can just cut right through it quite easily. Be careful when you're working with this one. If you kneel on it, as we did when we were doing our tile installation, you'll put little dents in it, and you don't want to damage that curb for your final install. Check the manufacturer's instructions for installation procedure. Ours said to just install using thin set, so I wanted to make sure that I had cement board, which is a great recipient of thin set, on all 3 sides that it was going to be touching. And then as I was installing it, I wanted to make sure it was as level as possible as well. If you have a crooked curb, then when you go to install that shower door, it's going to be very obvious. Or even if you don't have a door, just the tiles are going to be off a little bit. So definitely use a laser level if you can to make sure it's perfectly level. There's a code requirement that the top of your shower curb be angled just slightly so that any water that hits the top will drain into your shower. Now, I don't think you need to worry too much about that pitch when you're just doing the rough install of your shower, because you're going to install thin set and then install those tiles on top, and you can make sure you have that slight slope when you do that final tile install. Regardless of what type of curb you use, you need to make sure that you have a very seamless waterproofing system that not only extends up to the top of the curb, but also to the back side of the curb, and I even like to go into the room about a foot, just to make sure that any water that pools in that area does not get down to your subfloor. For example, we just used an alkaline resistant mesh that goes over every single one of those seams and the corners, and then we coated the entire thing with RedGard, and I used the same number of coats on the curb as I used on the shower floor itself. When it comes to installing the tile, it's usually easier to do those vertical tiles first. So we installed the front and back ahead of time, and then we installed the metal Schluter system rails. And when we did that, we went ahead and put a thin coat across the entire top to make sure that those rails were firmly installed, and the rails themselves were already angled slightly so that when we install the tiles will just rest right in place. We opted to just use the same tiles on the top of our curb as we used on the sides in the shower itself. You can opt to use a single monolithic piece of tile, or possibly a marble slab or composite material. Those have a very classy look. It's sometimes difficult to find them in the right size and shape, and they're of course going to be much more expensive. This curb installation ended up taking a lot more time than I thought it would, both with the initial install as well as that tiling work afterward. I think the meticulousness involved with doing all the tile cutting as well as making sure everything was perfectly level is the reason why it took so long. I think the finished product is totally worth it, but it was a lot more effort than I expected. I really hope you guys found this video helpful today. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. And if you have more suggestions or if you have some thoughts about a different way to do the shower curb, we would really appreciate if you put that down in the comment section below. Thanks, guys.